other things, including Benghazi, but it was part of the Benghazi, FOIA request.
In fact, the line after the line that's focused on about the video, it says, to show, telling Susan Rice, we need to convey, to show that we will be resolute in bringing people who harm Americans to justice. Now, there were no other Americans harmed in any other protest around the world.
That was clearly, he was referring to the incidents there. I just think that, this was something that could have had something to do with the video. The terrorists could have used it as a pretext. But this now has a lot of levels, and the only thing that's missing is evidence that the White House absolutely knew that everything they were being told about the video at the time was not true. They do have the CIA still to rely on to say, look, these talking points were sent to us by our intelligence community.
Well, the key part here is that Mike Morrell said that he relied on analysts in Langley as opposed to the people on the ground. And he chose to discount what his own CIA station chief was saying on the ground. That's kind of interesting.
Look, I think what's really happened here is what Morris says, this email has sort of reopened this in the same way that in Watergate, it was this sort of quiet, private discovery that there were tapes in the White House. It had also died down, and I think Richard Nixon would still be President of the United States today, through hook or by crook, had the tapes not been discovered. And that's what restarted. And this email from the White House, that's what everybody had said. Is there a way to is there any involvement here of the White House, which makes it obviously a political issue, the re-election of the president overriding the truth? And that's why I think it's all reopened. Watching Carney today, I have to say again, they don't pay him enough. On the first question is, if this was a release of information for a request on Benghazi, how can you tell us it isn't about Benghazi? He simply says, I have no idea, ask State Department. But then when you point out the fact that this is the only time, well, it isn't the only, there's one of these rare times when you get a high administration official going on all 5 shows. It happened only once in the Bush administration. It never happened in the Clinton administration. And if they had not been Benghazi, does anybody imagine she would have been on the 5 shows because of a demonstration in Cairo? That's ridiculous. The briefing, the appearance, it was all about Benghazi. Of course everything in the memo is about Benghazi. And when Carney denies it, he simply looks foolish.
Now, I didn't pull the soundbite, but a few weeks ago you said right here on this panel that Republicans should move on, that they should kind of leave Benghazi alone, that it was a dead end. Have you changed your perspective?
Yes, because of the appearance of this memo. It's, to me, equivalent of what was discovered with the Nixon tapes. The point is that Republicans have done a terrible job in building the case. Even today, I have to say, the questioning was disjointed. It was not organized. If they had appointed a special committee long time ago, the way it was done in Watergate, we would have had answers on this and the country wouldn't be tired. But what I did say was the reason it would not go anywhere is because the lack of interest of the other media. And what's changed now, and we saw it in the briefing room, is that I think the other media are somewhat embarrassed by the fact that unlike Fox, they allowed themselves to be stoned and spun and rolled for a year and a half, and now the memo appears, and it's obvious that they missed the story.
Coming up, we'll talk about that interview with Tommy Veitor, former spokesman for the NSC. Did you also change attacks to demonstrations in the talking points?
Maybe. I don't really remember.
You don't remember?
Dude, this was like 2 years ago. We're still talking about the most mundane
it is the thing
process
that everybody is talking about.
We're talking about the process of editing talking points. That's what bureaucrats do all day long. Your producers edit scripts multiple times.
It was interesting. Former NSC spokesman Tommy Veitor. We're back with our panel. George.
Well, that may be what bureaucrats do all the time, but bureaucrats don't set policy. And what we're talking about here is someone set a policy by changing words. Now, I am prepared to believe that more things in Washington are explained by confusion and fatigue than by conspiracy. Granted all that, and assuming there was lots of both on the night of September 11th, when reports were trickling in from Stuttgart and Benghazi and Tripoli and the State Department and the White House, granted confusion, granted fatigue, what really interests me is the durability of the story about the video, because durability implies premeditation and calculation. And if premeditation and calculation went into the repeating of this 3 days later at Andrews Air Force Base, later yet by the President at the UN, then you have what can be called not just normal government confusion and incompetence, but you have mendacity.
Mara, that interview?
Yeah, I thought the strongest thing that the White House has on their side, and I think Tommy Veitor brought this up today, is that they were relying on the CIA. Now, it's very possible, as you said, that the CIA decided to completely ignore the reports from the field, but they had the CIA as the source of the most of the content of the talking points.
It did go through the public affairs, which he conceded, and
they
he
made
sort
it
of
as
conceded
possible
that it might have been him that went from attacks to demonstrations.
They made it as positive as possible for the president. There's no doubt that the instinct of everybody in the White House in an election year is to not expose the president to any harm. He said al-Qaeda was on the run. They certainly don't want to do anything. They don't want to have him stand out there and say, guess what, we just got attacked by an al-Qaeda affiliate. So they're not trying to do that. The question is, did they absolutely know that it had nothing to do with a demonstration and purposely lied or not?
We learned a few
which we don't know yet.
We learned a few things, Charles. We learned that the president was not in the Situation Room. Tommy Veitor said he was in the Situation Room. The president was not there. And I asked him where he was. He said, I don't have a detector on him. He's someplace in the White House. He said the situation, I was in one room in the Situation Room. Let me tell you, I've been in there. It's not a big place. If the president's there, you know.
I think the dude told you a lot of stuff, and I think it reopens a real issue that I think has been buried, which is where was the president during all of these hours? We have yet to get an accounting. You know, you don't have to put a bracelet on his ankle in order to know where the president is. Everybody knows where he is. All the people around know where he is and what he's doing. We know he spent an hour on the phone with the Prime Minister of Israel about a completely different issue. In the middle of this attack about the Jerusalem issue, and the convention, we know he was on the phone with the Secretary of State. And we know that immediately afterwards, a statement is issued from the State Department about the video. I mean, is this what the State Department is doing? In the middle of the attack, the military says we were waiting for a request of aid from the State Department. And the head of the State Department is on the phone and worrying about the public relations and the statements. Who was in command? Who was in charge? Who gave orders to do or not to do? And that, I think, is a real issue here that has been completely, I think, ignored. Where was the president? What did he do? And when did he do it?
George, Charles mentioned the other reporters who are pressing now today, CNN, CBS, ABC, New York Times yesterday. It was a briefing room full of questions. We'll see where the coverage goes.
Well, it is a sign of how hard it is to change the agenda in Washington, to force something into the conversation, but how possible it is to do that. And Benghazi is alive until we need more legs to the story and another shoe to drop, something. But the Rhodes email was a shoe, and they're probably not the only shoe in the closet.
I only have 10 seconds, but is there frustration in that briefing room, Mara?
There's always frustration in that.
I know, I was there, but I mean, now particularly.
Yeah, I think there's frustration. I think that over time, on many issues, when you don't get answers, the frustration builds up.
Well, you get answers like, why is this not about Benghazi, since it was a Benghazi release? And he says, ask the State Department. Yeah. That's worse than frustration.
Please join us this weekend for a special look at the latest Benghazi developments. As we've been saying, there's a lot of them. Fox News reporting an hour. You can be seen Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, Saturday 10 p.m. Eastern, and again Sunday 9 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss this. That's it for the panel, but stay tuned for a man who tries to make the best of a bad situation.